A senator challenges the Treasury Secretary to his face, accusing him of dodging responsibility and behaving absolutely childish. But beneath the sharp words is a much bigger fight over credit card debt, consumer protection, and who is really accountable for federal housing giants.
Senator Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the President announced on January 9th, in his words, quote, effective January 20th, 2026, I, as President of the United States, am calling for a one-year cap on credit card interest rates of 10%. In remarks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the President further said, quote, the profit margin for credit card companies now exceeds 50%. He also indicated that Americans are paying 28, 30% interest rates. You were one of his top economic advisors, Mr. Secretary. Do you support interest rate caps to improve affordability on credit?
I wholeheartedly support President Trump's policy, and I think that what you've just said would be in direct contrast to what Senator Warren said about this administration favoring the big banks. But those are facts.
Well, I don't think my statement indicates at all what Senator Warren said or meant. I wanted an answer. You gave me one. Yep. But let's look at the current situation. We already have legislation that protects service members by putting a 36% cap, not just on credit cards, but all credit relationships. And it protects them from being exploited. And as in my youth, I was a company commander and saw it firsthand. Would it make sense as a first step to provide a 36% interest rate for all Americans, not just service members?
36% doesn't seem like much protection to me, Senator.
Well, it's better than some of the things that are being presented to service members without the rates. These new plans to buy commodities, and sometimes the rates go to 500, and still today, you have entrepreneurs who are charging extraordinary rates, and particularly to vulnerable populations, which I know they don't congregate at Harvard Square, but they also don't hang out in New Haven either. So I think that would be a sound step, Mr. Secretary.
Senator, you haven't seen all of New Haven.
I haven't, but I've seen a lot of it, the parts that you might have missed. The situation at Freddie and Fannie and Freddie is significant. We have significant federal interests financially in Fannie and Freddie. But under the director, Mr. Pulte, these taxpayer-owned assets are no longer in compliance with the law or with stock exchange listing standards. Pulte has appointed himself as director of both boards, even though the law says, quote, the director may not hold any office, position, or employment in Fannie or Freddie. A majority of the Fannie board has not been determined to be independent. The audit committee is no longer comprised entirely of independent members. And the committee has been, the governance has been sacked by political affiliates. These all are prohibited by law and regulation. So how will you bring them into compliance, Mr. Secretary?
That would be FHFA, not Treasury.
Excuse me. You are one of the largest, or the taxpayers are. You provided them, Treasury did, not you personally, a $200 million bailout in 2008, and you have no interest in Fannie and Freddie?
I'm very interested in Fannie and Freddie, and I'm interested in fulfilling the mission to the American people to keep mortgage rates low.
What about following the laws?
So again, you should ask Director Pulte. I do not see I don't think this creates a.
Well, all right, you have nothing to do with Fannie and Freddie. Director Pulte has said that you and him are, quote, very aligned, and we meet regularly about the conservatorship. By the way, it's in conservatorship because of Secretary Paulson, your predecessor. According to Fannie and Freddie's annual reports, the companies, quote, continue to rely on financial support from Treasury pursuant to our senior preferred stock purchase agreement, under which taxpayers own 1 million preferred shares and a warrant to purchase up to 80% of their shares. Treasury staff manages those shares and warrants for the taxpayers. Your predecessor, Hank Paulson, placed these companies into conservatorship. So you have the premise or the power to place Fannie and Freddie into conservatorship I would think that that gives you a little bit of leverage talking to Mr. Pulte about why he's not following the law. You're reneging on responsibilities, Mr. Secretary. And you're also, being the senior person here, your behavior to some of my colleagues is absolutely childish. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
This exchange was not just a personal clash between a senator and a cabinet official. It exposed two competing views of government responsibility at a moment when Americans are feeling intense financial pressure from debt, housing costs, and high interest rates. At the center of the questioning was a proposal to cap credit card interest rates, an idea that has surfaced repeatedly during periods of economic strain. Supporters argue that extreme interest rates trap vulnerable borrowers in long-term debt and that government intervention is necessary to create basic consumer protection. Critics warn that strict caps can reduce access to credit, especially for higher-risk borrowers, potentially pushing people toward even more expensive or unregulated lending. The tension in the hearing reflects that unresolved national debate about affordability versus access. The conversation then shifted to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, institutions that sit quietly at the core of the American housing system. Because taxpayers rescued them during the 2008 financial crisis, questions about legal compliance and federal oversight are never just technical details. They raise a broader issue. When the government backstops private markets, who ensures accountability? And where does responsibility ultimately land when rules appear to be bent or ignored? What made the moment especially striking was not only the policy disagreement, but the accusation about conduct. Calling a senior official's behavior childish signals a breakdown in the usual restrained language of congressional oversight. Moments like this reveal how economic anxiety and political distrust are reshaping even the tone of governance, turning technical hearings into visible confrontations about credibility and duty. For viewers, the real significance lies beyond the headline confrontation. Credit costs, mortgage stability, and federal oversight of major financial institutions directly shape whether families can borrow, buy homes, or stay afloat during hard times. Hearings like this are one of the few public arenas where those pressures surface in real time, forcing officials to answer not just for policy choices, but for the consequences those choices carry in everyday life. That is why Capital Lens follows these exchanges closely, not for the drama, but for the clarity they provide about how power, money, and accountability intersect in Washington. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep watching the decisions that ultimately reach far beyond the hearing room and into the financial reality of millions of Americans.